Here is the plot and an update on the plot as we reach the end of the first season's plantings. I have a greenhouse on this side full of rubbish. At some point this will be torn down, and in front of it there is a patio. The idea here is that I'm probably going to build a roof over the top of this, collects rainwater and some IBCs, maybe have a shed, and also creates a shelter from the rain and possibly the sun as well. There's a really bad compost heap, again that needs to be rebuilt so that it's dark inside, otherwise it's not doing its job properly. And onto the plants. This large bed was one of the last ones covered with cardboard and compost. It contains nearly 100 quinoa plantings, but because there's quite a lot of multiple sowings here, it could be anything like 150 plants. Maybe 8 kilograms of quinoa might come out of this if it all works out. I have 29 tomato plants in bags at home with their own watering system, but they have metal poles in bags, and what I really wanted to try was what people do in polytunnels, which is hanging down strings and getting the plants to grow up the strings by twisting the strings around the plants like a helix. This is what everybody does inside polytunnels, and these are the excess tomatoes. Obviously when you sow plants, you plant more than you need, and some of the excess ones I planted here. Now we had a nasty chill, which wasn't technically a ground frost, but with the northerly wind it acted like a chill, and I thought it had killed half of these, if not most of these tomato plants, but they are all recovering. Tomatoes are like weeds. In the same family over here are early potatoes. These were also blackened by that nasty chill breeze, but as you can see they're doing really nicely, and we even have flowers. So they're starting up, they're getting there, and we are at the end of May now, so we would expect that. On the left over here is a 1 meter high netting. This is the EnviroMesh, so nothing gets in, not even teeny tiny creepy crawlies. Inside there is elephant garlic in 3 rows, that's about 30 plants, and in between I sowed some carrots. We've had to go in there several times to weed, it's kind of fun. And on the outside is a row of garlic, and there's supposed to be another row of carrots behind there, but direct sowings of carrots and parsnips have been difficult this year. It's not really worked out, possibly because there's been too much heat and not enough rain. On the end here, sown in November, are broad beans from my own broad beans from previous year when I grew 320 plants on another plot. And on the other side, the same thing. The broad beans are doing very, very nicely indeed. As you can see, I've already eaten some, and they are very, very nice, very tasty. This bed is mainly an onion bed. These onions were also sown in November, next to a perennial gooseberry bush that came with the plot. I didn't plant him, he was already here. Looks like we have a helicopter going overhead. I left a gap at the front here for flowers and such like, and I also did a row of turnips. The seeds seem to have spread in the wind, but there are some flowers still left. Again, weeds and weeding they didn't survive too well. Behind the large EnviroMesh I have a lower EnviroMesh, and this is full of lots and lots and lots of garlic. Probably can't see too well here, but suffice to say there's 2 rows, 3 rows, and then 2 rows. And as I mentioned before, the idea here was to have parsnips between, so that when the garlics come out, the parsnips carry on, and then I plant something like leeks underneath, in between again instead. That didn't seem to work, the parsnips didn't seem to germinate. I'm having another go here on this strip on the outside. There's 2 rows here. There are actually signs of parsnips coming up. You never know. Might get some. Do love my parsnips. On the other side, this is 2 rows of mustard, going very nicely. Hopefully I can make some mustard sauce out of that. That's my plan. I am growing this for seed, not for the leaves. I have some mustard at home for the leaves. This bed is an uncovered, so it's an experiment, so see whether or not these get damaged by grubs and things like that. Onions and garlic. So these two larger rows here are the garlic, and then either side are rows of onions. So again, these onions were sown in November, and so were the garlic. Unlike this bed. So what we have here is two arches, two beds either side, making 4 beds in these arches. The first one didn't do too well. It is a bed of sown onions. So we sown these from seed this year. So again, we're not expecting them to be so big anyway. Plus a couple of rows of carrots. This bed has been rather difficult to tame. A lot of grass, a lot of weeds coming through. And because of that, a lot of them didn't make it. It was a bit tricky. Just recently, I've been putting the winter squash on this arch. So only last week I put in 5 uchiki curries on the right hand side and 3 cucumbers on the left hand side. There was an uchiki curry given to me before, but he got killed in the chill, unfortunately. I would have had more uchiki curries, but they just didn't germinate. Talking of not germinating, we have 1 cornichon and 1 cucamelon here. That's all that came up. That's what I got. What can I say? On the other side, sticking with the winter squash first, I also built a frame. Now on the far side, that was the pea rack. It's 6 foot high, it's 1.8 meters. It's intended for the peas to grow up, but the peas got eaten by the mice. The mice wanted them more than I did. Similarly, on this side, where the onions and garlic mix was, I have a lower mesh which I built for sugar snaps. Same thing, mice. Fortunately, I've got sugar snaps and peas at home, so I'm not bothered. But last year, we grew a single tromboncino. If you know what that is, it's like a very long, courgette-sized winter squash, and it can be up to 1 meter long. Slightly bulbous end, but otherwise it will grow straight if it's hanging down. So that's the idea here. I grew them at my archway at home last year. As I said, I got 1 and it grew very prolifically. So I'm expecting 8 plants on this side and 8 plants on that side to grow up and over, and then to have these massive fruits hanging down. That'll be cool. That's my plan. Winter squash, weird things. You know, big fruits, but they can grow upwards and they can hang. Otherwise, we've got summer squash on the next archway's beds. This summer squash is 3 courgettes, 3 patty pan sunbursts, followed by a repeat of 4 courgettes and 4 patty pan sunbursts. This bed, like the one next to it with the bunched onions, is a bit weedy. The path I'm standing on is covered in grass. So I've covered it to try and have a go at the weeds, really knock them back for a while. I did so on the next bed, as you shall see soon, but that's uncovered. This I kept covered, and rather than just leave it as a covered bed, I took the cover off, trimmed it, removed 2 of those 3 rhubarbs that were there before. The other 2, they just flowered straight away last year and this year, so I thought I'd tear them out. I left the big one because he's kind of pretty. And so I've trimmed all this and cleared it a bit and then put the plastic back. And so as you can see, then what I did is I just cut a cross in it, dug it up, put a plant in, covered it back up, and covered up those flappy bits that were left after I cut the cross in with some wood chips. So this is a little experiment, see what happens. Obviously summer squash, they don't go anywhere, they'll just sit there and produce fruit where they stand as a big bushy plant. This arch is a bean arch. It was a bean arch last year when I built it, and it's supposed to be a bean arch this year. The beans on this side not doing well like they didn't do last year. That's the Lady Dies, purple speckles with black. On this side, doing amazingly well. It's just ridiculous. It's like, you know, you overseed and then they all come up. This is the Tsar beans. They're big white beans. Both sets of beans are beans that I collected from last year, so they're saved seeds. What's interesting here is these large leaves, if you don't recognize them. I cleared all of these what I thought. I dug all of these out. Big roots, deep roots. I dug them all out last year when I discovered there were horseradish. And I made a wonderful horseradish sauce, which I've enjoyed. And it's just run out. So I'm growing more horseradish at home. And then this, I discovered is still here. Apparently it's like mint, you can't really get rid of it, and it just keeps growing and keep growing. And, you know, I'm even protecting it. Look, Darcy, a whole load of tiles that we dug out of the next bed, which I'm going to show you, or the final bed. And she made that to protect them when it's right in the middle of the path at the end here. Behind the second archway on the other side is brassicas held under Enviromesh hoops. This first set is early cabbages, so what we have here are greyhounds and golden acres. Some of them are doing quite well. I think we're gonna have some this year, which is great. As previous times when I've tried to grow this stuff, it wasn't covered and it was just overtaken by weeds and such like. I have still yet to grow and taste kohlrabi successfully. That is all kohlrabi, except the last 4 plants, which were broccoli given to me. So that's the veg, up until the final bed. And then there's the final bed. This vast bed, 6 meters by 5 meters, was just a rubbish tip and a place with a greenhouse on the right hand side. It was very uneven. There was a bump, as you can see by the path at the back. There's a bump towards the left at the back, and then a dip on the right. And I've tried to level it and flatten it, dig it. The amount of rubbish I pulled out of it is ridiculous. But finally, we tamed it to a certain extent. I haven't put any amendments in it at all, apart from where the plants were put in. And I just laid out brown paper, as I've done with the other paths, and covered them with wood chips to make a path, so that I break it up a bit so we can walk through this field when it grows. The plan here was to do a 4 sisters. A lot of people know what 3 sisters is. That's sweet corn, winter squash and pole beans. Because the sweet corn in this country doesn't really grow that high, I've opted not to put them in. Hopefully they won't lack nitrogen as a result, but so technically I've gone down to 2 sisters on that 3 sisters selection, but I still have regularly lots of squash and lots of sweet corn. But the 4th sister is amaranth, all around the outside edge, purple amaranth down this side, a mixture of purple and bronze amaranth down that side, and then the final side is just the bronze amaranth. The squashes are quite closely packed. This small bed here is more tightly packed than the rest of the horseshoe bed. So we're testing here the intensity, the closeness, if the sweet corn are too close or not. And also there are 5 winter squash in here. Again, it's probably too many, but they can grow across the paths. They're basically going to cover the ground and protect the plants from weeds and things. And meanwhile, the sweet corn, not caring about the ground, will be up in the air. So let's go through the squash. We have at the front here 3 crown prints, and at the back 2 spaghettis. And then we have a mixture going around here of Gallia Decine, I have no idea if I pronounced that right, and the Marina di Giorgia, and some tromboncinos. When tromboncinos are on the ground, they tend to, instead of creating long, meter-long fruit, they tend to create a spiral, a bit like, some kind of salami or black pudding or something. So we continue with lots of those, again, a few spaghettis. Over here is a special one. This one is Zucca Marmellata, from James Wong's book. Most of these are from his selection of best of this and best of that. The marmellata is a Italian delicacy they make into jam, so that should be fun. There's another one here which we haven't covered yet called there we are, Tonda Padana. That's a Tonda Padana, another one of James Wong's. Tromboncino, Marina di Giorgia, and then there's another Crown Prince. And then mostly over here is butternut squash, Waltham butternut, and then over there one butternut squash of a different variety called Honeyboat, which is like pink with black streaks on it. Nice experiment there, see what that comes out like. As this bed ends, another bed emerges, which is really supposed to be flowers. So that's a whole bunch of sunflowers on the corner and some in the middle, and then heathers here, which hopefully will just keep growing and growing and growing together in some big mass. And then over here, apart from a few volunteers, like there seems to be a squash plant there, and some quinoa maybe, but there are other flowers here that are supposed to be here. This fuzzy thing here I think is a cosmos, and I think those are nigellas over there, and over here are sweet peas. Tara wanted sweet peas, so I built her a little rack. It's not much more than a meter, 1.2 meters high, with a bit more mesh I had left over, and some hooked rebars that happened to be on the site. I just very quickly knocked that up. It'll create a nice edge and a little sun shield for some of these plants. Also worth mentioning is at the front here I planted 20 saffron crocuses, because they will, well, so that they come up again in August or October, somewhere between those two. So there we go, that is the plot as it stands. Lots of growing to happen, of course, over the next month and a half. Most of those onions and garlics that I sowed in November, and the broad beans first. The broad beans will be coming out next week probably. I'll be harvesting them from next week, but the garlics and onions sometime in July. And then some things will stay, like the winter squash and the sweet corn will stay, the summer squash and the small onions, and oh, we didn't cover this bed. The middle of this bed is quite self-explanatory. Beets, lettuce and bunches of spring onions in there. They'll obviously stay for a while. And as you can see, as in elsewhere, we sometimes have volunteer potatoes from previous plot owner, and I didn't know they were still there and decided to just leave them, see what they are, just for fun. So a lot will change as these four beds here, that one, that one, that one and that one, and then eventually the potatoes as well, the first earlies over there, they will eventually all get harvested quite soon in the summer, and I'll be putting in things like leeks and turnips and swedes and fennel and radicchio, chicory, and winter cabbage, some of which have already been growing. The leek has been growing since April time. There we go. There it is. That's the overview. Take care. Be safe.